Hello. Let's try to do UI stuff today. And it will be a bit more complicated than the previous steps, but I will try my best to explain it in a way that makes sense. Or at least in a way that will let you make your own UI. Hopefully. And I hope you actually want to make your own UIs, because that type of stuff will really elevate your mods, I think. And not that many people are doing that yet, so let's see. So let me pull up the episode list. So next up will be mission view model, countlet UI really, mission view and view model, and then loading UI sprites. This might be a long episode. Hopefully, if it's over an hour, that's really bad. But hopefully, it's not that bad. Also depends on how quickly I can get up to speed with the actual building parts. But I guess we must start. I guess we must start already. So there will be sort of lecture parts where I try my best to explain the counted UI. So if you have any questions, I recommend that you ask them so that we can maybe clear up a bit about how it works. But we will see how the explanation will progress. But anyway, so hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Artisan Workshop modding tutorial series. And in this episode, we are going to do our first custom UI using the counted UI UI language that Tailworlds has developed for Bannerlord. And because this is the first time we are doing our own UI, I will also try my best to actually explain how the whole UI system works. And then we can go on and do the mission UI. So I plan to add to the mission view how many of the items we have in our inventory. So our items are sort of like healing potions. So it would be nice to have in the mission view together with our health bar and all that stuff. it would be nice to have how many of these items we have left in our inventory. And to do that, we should add our own UI element to the combat UI. So, and hello everyone, hello Sebastian, hello Farshad. I hope you're having a great day. So, to actually start to explain how Gauntlet UI works and how Daleworlds has built their UI, I'm going to use this mod that I made to help me explain. So this is called Useful UI Debug, and the name might be a bit of a misnomer, but this will help me hopefully explain a bit how the UI actually works. So let me just start the game with my Useful UI Debug mod. And what this mod does is that it gives you a view that shows like the different elements of the current UI. So if we go into a campaign, I can press Shift F1 to open this view. And the text is kind of small, and I was not able to change the text size. So let me zoom in OBS a bit, maybe a bit more. Okay, that might be. Hopefully this is readable. If it's not readable, then please tell me so that I can increase it even further. So this will give you a view like this that will show you all the layers in the UI. So, and on the background we have the encyclopedia, and what this will show you are all the layers that construct the current screen, and these are layers inside Screen Manager, and Screen Manager is one global thing. You can see if we try to read what it says here, you have map bar, and map bar is this thing on the bottom. You have encyclopedia. You have actually two parts of encyclopedia. You have encyclopedia bar, and you have encyclopedia home. I will explain shortly why that has two parts. And then you have things like Steam notification, game notifications, and pop-ups and stuff like that. So other parts of the UI. So to actually explain what any of this means, I think I will need to draw a diagram. So let's just start with that. So this will be my Gauntlet UI sort of overview. So first of all, you have a Screen Manager. Let's put it here. You will have a Screen Manager. That will have a bunch of Gauntlet layers. Let's make this a bit smaller. And in my drawings, stuff going downwards is something contained within the thing that is above it. So Screen Manager has a bunch of Gauntlet layers. So these things up here, oh, I need to, wait, what? These were cut off. Okay, Okay, so let me make sure that these are within the zoomed in window. So first of all, you have Screen Manager, which is a global object. And within the Screen Manager, you have a bunch of content layers. And this is the list of all the content layers that are currently visible or currently in use. And each of the content layers has, well, 0 or multiple, 0, 1 or multiple of these pairs of movie plus view model. So just copy this. So each of the content layers has a movie plus view model. And let me put a background here so that this is one area. Okay, so and if we look at, for example, the encyclopedia that we have in the background, so the encyclopedia here is the layer 5, consisting of 2 movies, encyclopedia bar and encyclopedia home. And if I move my mouse here, you can see it says here which one of the layers is which one the layers the mouse is currently on, and then the movie. So if I'm here, this is part of the encyclopedia home, and this is part of the encyclopedia bar. So why you would want to have multiple movies in your layers, I'm not exactly sure, but you can do that if you want to. And Tailworlds sometimes does it. But we will use one movie per one of our layers. We don't need multiple ones. So what are movies and what are view models? That has to be the next thing that we explore. And that starts to get us closer to actually building a UI. So if we look at movie, and every movie will also have a view model. So these are sort of linked. Oops. But they are still sort of separate. So let me maybe, oh, I don't want to move the title. Let me put this a bit lower so that it's sort of more clear that these are subordinate things. So movie is very much like a HTML page, if you have ever worked with web. So you have an XML. You have an XML definition, like you would have in HTML. And this definition will contain multiple widgets like buttons, checkboxes, text area, or brief apps, which are sort of more complicated groups of widgets or other things. So if we actually look at if we actually look at something like that, so we see that here we have, for example, one of our movies at the moment is Encyclopedia Bar. So we can go look for Encyclopedia Bar movie. So if I go to PowerShell, and we can use ripgrep to, well, actually, no, I can use file search because this is, so if we go look for, what was the movie name? The movie name was Encyclopedia Bar. We get this XML file, which will look sort of like HTML. So this is the UI definition. You have widgets, you have the back history button. So these things over here are defined here, back button and forward button. You have the page title, and you have the current path bar, or which is hidden behind this view at the moment. You have the search text bar. So each of these things are just widgets here in the UI definition. But this is just like HTML. This is sort of like passive layout. So there's no code in here. So to actually make this UI do something, you will need the view model. And in the case of Encyclopedia Bar, the view model is right here, the Encyclopedia Navigator VM. And view models are just C# objects that actually link the UI into something useful. So the view model can have properties that feed data into the C# property that feed data into the UI, or they can have other view models. Oh, okay. They can have methods that work as callbacks. So for example, if you press a button, you will need a callback that happens when you actually press the button. Or they can have like child view models, or nested view models. For more complicated UI, you might want to go multiple layers deep. So this is the sort of architecture that is behind the UI. So we need to get our layer together with our movie and view model into the game. And then we will need to make definitions for our view model and our movie. So how do we actually get a layer? And to do that part of the explanation, we actually want to, because we want to do our view in a mission, let's actually go into a mission. And then you will see that my useful UI debugger actually has more modes. One of these is mission views. If I toggle mission views here, you will see that one of the current mission views is called mission gauntlet crosshair. For example, there are multiple other ones, and you will see that mission gauntlet crosshair has here its own gauntlet layer, which is with the movie called crosshair and the view model called crosshair VM. So we can actually just go and look at the code for mission gauntlet crosshair and try to copy how they create their own gauntlet layer. And we already have a mission view that we created at the very beginning of the project. Right here. Artisan Beer mission view. So if we just look at what they do in mission counted crosshair to create the crosshair, that should give us an idea of how we can do our own counted layers. So if we search for mission counted crosshair, you can see here that at the beginning they create the view model and they create the layer, they load the movie, and then at some point they should add the movie to the screen. Oh, it's right here. I'm just blind. So, and here they add the layer to the screen. So this is basically all that we have to do. So let's try to copy this into our own mission view. So first of all, we need a counted layer. We need a movie. So first of all, we need a view model that is, let's call it Artisan Beer mission view model. And we can copy the naming convention that they have here. So let's call the view model data source and generate type. Oh, I didn't want this. I want it in the same file. Okay, so let's make our own view model and let's use the same naming convention they have here. So let's call it underscore data source. And we need to make our own view model class. So let's just do public class and this will inherit from view model. Oh. No, just the view model. Okay, so this will be our data source, and for the count layer we also need a using statement. Other things they had here, they had a movie. So this is type counted movie, I think, or I counted movie. But we can use counted movie, I think. It doesn't really matter. I counted movie will be fine. Okay, let's use counted movie. So this will be, if we look at the diagram. Oh shoot, I'm in zoomed mode. Do I have to do this again? Maybe. I should do this again, I guess, because I'm in the wrong camera mode. This is annoying. But the code was not showing, so I have to do this again. So let's start again from the point where. Let's start again from the point where I was looking at the. I was looking at the crosshair here. So so you will see that if we look at the mission views, we will have mission view called mission counted crosshair, and this mission view will actually create its own counted layer called and here the movie is called crosshair with the view model called crosshair VM. And if we go look at this mission, the code for this mission view, mission gauntlet crosshair. So in mission gauntlet crosshair, you can see that at the beginning, they just create the view model, they create the layer, and they load the movie, and they add the layer to the mission screen. So this will be exactly what we need to do to add our own movie to the screen inside a mission. And our own movie will contain the XML definition for our UI. So if we just copy this, everything should be fairly straightforward. So inside our mission view, we already have mission view from the very back. In one of the first episodes, we created our own mission view to handle the key presses inside the battle. But now we want to also add the content layer and the related movie and the view model to our mission view. So let's just do right that. So let's do content layer. And let's do content movie, called movie. And for the data source, we will have to create our own view model. So let's do let's call this Artisan beer mission view model, mission VM. This will inherit from view model. And we need one of these. And we can use the same naming convention they have here. So in Tailworld's code, the view models are always called underscore data source. So we can use the same convention. Why not? And we need to do this in like initialize. So in on missions in initialize, we can do basically the same initialization they have right here. So we need to initialize the data source, we need to create the layer, then we need to load the movie, and this will be the name of our XML file. And then we need to add the layer to the mission screen. So let's first create the data source. And then let's create the layer. And this argument is something about the rendering order, but we don't really, doesn't really matter too much for us. I guess we can put 1 here. Yeah, let's put 1, why not? So this determines if the things are drawn on top of each other. If things are drawn on top of each other, like in which order they are drawn. And then the movie will be layer.load movie with the name of our XML for the UI that we will create shortly. So this will be called let's call it like Artisan mission Artisan, let's call this Artisan beer HUD, for example. And we need to give it the data source. And the last step is to add this to the mission screen. Oh, and this actually wants iContent movie, so I guess we have to give it iContent movie. But that is fine. And then we also need to destruct this. So that was in initialize, and then in finalize, we want to destroy everything we created. So we need to remove layer, and we need to destroy the movie, and we need to destroy the data source. Although I don't know if this is really that necessary, but at least we need to remove this from the layer. Or at least we need to remove the layer from the mission screen. So we can as well do all the other destruction stuff. Might as well. So now we should be at the point where the only thing we really need is our XML, and right now we should be at the point where the only thing we need is the XML for our UI definition, and then at the moment our view model doesn't do anything, so we also need to make sure that it actually provides the UI with the data that we need to show. But let's start by making this making the XML definition for our UI. So to do that, we should do what we always do. So try to copy code from Tailworlds. So we go to our own project. We also need to create this path. So the movies and also the UI, the movies and the gauntlet prefabs are located in a directory called GUI prefabs. So we go to our own project and create this directory, and then we look at something we can copy for us. Well, let's just copy the encyclopedia bar, I guess. It's not too bad. And we need to call this Artisan beer HUD. HUD stands for heads up display. So that's usually like a term that is used for things that are shown in the 3D view. And then if we go to modify our HUD, we won't need all these constants right now. So these are just something that helps them to keep all the margins and stuff like that consistent. But this is where the actual movie will start. So if we remove everything inside the window, now we will have an basically empty movie, empty UI prefab. And this is where we can write whatever code we want to. Okay, and then we get to the part where you have to figure out what do you actually want to do with your UI. And the sort of tricky part is that there isn't really any documentation for this UI language that Tailworlds has. But I think if you are familiar with stuff like HTML, you have sort of an idea of what things should look like. And also you can just cabbage, or you can try to find what you want to create from the UIs that Tailworlds has built. And you can also use scriptgrep to find all sorts of things that you might want to find, because all the UI definitions are written in XML, which is plain text. So you can search for things like text widgets, and you will get a bunch of results that sort of show how they have created text in their UIs. Apparently this will take a while, but we should get a bunch of results soonish. Why is this so slow? Usually, usually this is a lot faster than this, but I think there might be some... What? Oh, I typoed. I typoed text widget. Okay, nice. So you can use reprep to search for things like text widget if you want to find how they have built, how they write text in their UIs. You will get a bunch of results that will show you kind of ideas of how you can render different types of text with different types of, for example, vertical alignment or horizontal alignment, different type of brushes for different fonts, and you can see how they actually get the text. For example, here, this at item means that this text will come from the code somehow, and we will look at that shortly. Or can we find... Well, in somewhere there we'll have something like int text. So you can see also that if we look for int text, we will find text widgets where instead of specifying text, they specify int text. And this means that this will actually be a number and stuff like that. So you can, using reprep, you can try to find how the UI is actually built. And if you want more context, you can give like, you want to see more lines before and after, you can give like a capital C, dash capital C, and then number, and then it will give you lines before and after the matching line. So you can see a bit more of the area that surrounds the thing that you're searching for. So let's say that we actually want to have this sort of text widget. So let's say we want to just have some sort of text widget in here. See, to see that how many of the items we have left, so we can render the amount that we have of the artisan beer. But first, just to see that this works, let's try with hello from our movie. And let's say that we don't want to mess with the fonts yet. I'm not sure if these size policies really matter, and let's say we don't care about that one well, so let's just try if this will draw anything. So we can go into the game and see, I can actually add my useful UI debug here in the launch settings as well. UI debug is like this. Yes. So I can add my mod here in the launch settings so that we will have both of these mods, so I can see if our view and our movie is actually loaded, even if the text doesn't yet work. IGM Industries. Hi, Armin. Now, if we go into a mission, you can see in the bottom left corner you can see that our view is actually working. If we look at the layers right now, we should be able to see our Artisan Beer HUD here together with our Artisan Beer mission view model amongst the layers in the current screen. So that is actually working. It's not, it should be in the top left corner, I think. Because if I don't want, I want it in the top corner. So we need to mess with the horizontal alignment, I think. So we just look for or vertical. I think we need to find some place where they specify something with vertical alignment. So for example, here they have text widget which specifies vertical alignment bottom. So let's just try this, but instead of bottom, we need a top. Well, actually it's right here. We have vertical alignment bottom here. So let's just go vertical alignment top. And that should already fix that issue. But on top of that, let's try to get the number. Let's try int text actually, because we want this to come from our code actually. So let's try to do something like this int text victories. But instead of victories, we want beer amount. And let's try to find this victories. So so let's actually look for property called victories that is somehow related to tournament leaderboard. So here you have tournament leaderboard entry VM with property called victories. And here you can see that this is a integer property with something with an attribute called data source property. And so this attribute is something that you just need to have for this is just something that you kind of need for your stuff to be usable from the UI. And you can see that this is in fact inside the view model. And also to have the UI update when the property is changed, we also need to have this on property changed with. We need to call this on property changed when the value changes. So I guess we can just copy this into our own view model. So let's call this beer amount, which is the name we used here. And we need a field. And we need to change the on property changed to match the name of the property. So this on property changed is just something that will tell the UI that this property has changed. So it's sort of like a notification thing. And it will cause the UI to change the value that is shown. But if we just start with some values so that we can see that we can actually get data into the UI from the code. So let's just set beer amount to something like 64. And we can see that the UI will actually show the number we specified from the code. So if we go back into a town center, you can see that now our text has moved to the top left corner and we successfully get the number that we specified in the code. Okay. Wait, did we have a condition here? We had a condition like this here. So now there are a couple of things I want to do next. So first of all, I think this UI should be hidden if we are not in a battle or if we are not in a place where we can use the items. So we specified earlier that the item is usable in battle and in stealth. So I think we should also make the UI visible only when we are in either battle or stealth mission. Let's try to look for something like is visible. And you can see that actually all these widgets. So widget is like the base class of everything. So even widget has is visible property, or these are called attributes. So we can just use is visible attribute to hide stuff. So we can just come here into our widget and try to do something exactly like this. So they have is visible and then equals at and some property. So this will be, we can just call it is visible. And then we need to do another property, which is just like the beer amount. Except that this time it will be bool. I need to change a couple of things around. So this will control if we should show the UI or not. And at the beginning we should set this to... we don't get the mission here. So how do I... I need to listen to mission mode changed. do, do. So let's just say that hello. Let's see, how do I want to write this now? So that it makes sense. So this is kind of the issue of trying to do live coding, because I kind of become conscious of what I'm trying to do, so then it becomes actually really hard to write more complicated stuff. So let's just say that we give mission here as an argument to the Artisan beer mission view. Let's just say that we give a mission here as an argument to the VM. So we might need that later as well, so that we can, when we initialize the VM, we can check um, we can check if this widget should be visible based on the mode. So let's do something like, actually let's do something like on mission mode changed with mission, and then here we set is visible based on this thing we had right here. So mission mode is battle or stealth, and this will be mission. Okay, and here in the constructor we can also do on mission mode changed with mission, and in our behavior we need to listen for mission mode change, and when the mission mode change we need to tell our data source, oh, this should be public. So in our mission behavior we can listen for on mission change, and then we need to tell our data source that hey, the mission mode has actually changed. So this way, if the mission mode changed, we can change the visibility status of the widget. So this is useful, for example, at the start of the battle, the mission mode will actually be deployment, and then when you actually click OK, deployment is over, then this will be called. The on mission mode change will be called, and then you can set your widget to be visible right when the mission mode is changed. And one other thing I want to do is to actually move the beer drinking into the VM, but let's do that maybe a tiny bit later. So one other thing that we need to do is that instead of just getting a random number for the beer amount, we should actually get the item count from our inventory. So to do that, we already have code here for that. So we get the Artisan beer item, and then we can get item counts from the item roster of the main party. So that there's a slight issue that I would actually write this a bit differently if this was just my random project code. And we can do this in the constructor as well. So we can just get the Artisan beer object, and we can get the item roster, and we can get the number of items from there. just like so. But now there is the slight issue that the number would not be updated because we do this just once in the constructor. So instead of doing that, we should move the drinking of beer into the view model so that it will be easier to keep the data in sync. So in general, I think it's a good idea to have all the interactive stuff in the view models. So we change this to public drink beer, and here we need to do data source drink beer. So we move the interactive elements. We still listen to the input in the view, but we move the sort of processing of the input into the data source so that it's easier to show the results in the UI. So here, instead of doing this, we can just check if it's visible, or if it's not visible, then we return. And here we need the mission main agent. So we could actually just keep the mission here. Because we have given the mission in the constructor, so let's just keep it. And here, let's use that. I guess this is fine. We could take this artisan beer object into somewhere else, but this happens only when we press a button, so that looks fine. So for performance reasons, might be better to store this artisan beer object, but to be honest, this is not that expensive of an operation. And then when we heal, we need to, on top of everything else we did, we also need to decrease the beer amount by 1. And because we use the property with this setter, that will also call the onProperty changed, which will actually update our UI. So now if we just try all of this, a couple of things that should have changed is that the UI should not be visible while we are in the town without a battle. So the UI should only be visible if the mission state is battle or stealth. And we should also get the number correctly. So now we should not see the UI. And if we go into looter fight, we get no reference here. So I guess this happens, I guess the first on mission mode change happens before on mission screen initialized. So we should do we can actually, can we do it like this? So if data source, this means that if data source is not null, then call this thing. But if data source is null, then do nothing. So the first time the on mission mode change is called, the mission screen is not yet initialized, so we don't have our data source yet. So then if our data source is not yet constructed, we don't need to call on mission mode change anyway, so this is just fine. If it is null, then we do nothing, and that is correct. And now, when we are in battle, we actually see our number, which also has the correct amount of beer that we had in our inventory, which is 10. And if we use one, you can see that the number goes down. So everything is working kind of correctly. Okay.
I'll split your skull.
So then, that is pretty much everything I wanted to do for this part. We have our combat UI. But let's do a small recap, I guess. So, I have two of these open. So to recap everything we did, the counted UI consists of multiple counted layers, and different parts of the game can add their own layers. And in our case, we add layers from the mission views. Each counted layer can have movies and view models, where the movies are the actual XML that has the UI definition. And we created our own movie. So we created our own movie called Artisan Beer HUD, which is only one widget, which is this text widget, which listens to the view model. It takes a couple of things from the view model. And the view model is the corresponding C# part of the UI, which gives data to the movie and can also have callbacks for things like buttons and other interactive elements. And in our case, the view model definition consisted of the beer amount, which is the boolean of how many of this item we have, and it's visible, which controls if the widget should be viewable or not, depending on the mission mode. And we also moved our drinking beer into the view model so that it's we also moved our drink beer method into the view model so that the view model has all the interactive elements and handles kind of the logic behind the scenes. And the view model, and because the interactive elements are in the view model, it becomes easier to keep all the UI elements updated. And in the mission view, we initialized our view model and our layer and movie, and we put our movie into the layer that we created, and we push our layer into the screen. And then when the mission is over, we do the reverse, so we do the cleanup, and that is basically everything we need to do to get our movie onto the screen. And And one more thing, this load movie, this is the part where we actually kind of get everything together. So we state the XML name of our movie file. So our movie was Artisan Beer HUD.xml. So we say that we load this movie file together with this data source to create this movie that is put into the layer that we can add to the screen. And that is everything. That is finally everything we need. Okay. Any questions? And I realized this is sort of my explanation is not perfect, but I guess I'm not the hero. I'm not the hero you need, but I'm the one that you deserve, or something like that. Because this stuff is not documented anywhere, and this was actually kind of pain to figure out as well. So, and with that, we have created our first UI, which is just one. It's just one text widget that shows one number, but that is the start. And all great things have to start from humble beginnings. And at least we managed to complete. At least we managed to get something on the screen. And in the next episode, we will make it a bit more interesting and actually get a sprite for the. So we will. So in the next episode, we will load. Okay, whatever. In the next episode, we will load UI sprites in the game so that we can put like icon next to the number, so it will make a bit more intuitive what the number is actually representing. And we will also change our UI layout a bit to facilitate that change. And for me at least, the hardest part of the UI after you have figured out how all this layer and movie and view model stuff works, like that is just something that you need to learn once. And after that, it becomes sort of pretty clear, pretty intuitive. And then the hardest part is just trying to figure out how to actually write your UI XMLs. And for that, the only thing I can say that and writing the UI is something that I think so writing the UI is something I think you have to learn just through trial and error. But I find that this rip grep and searching for important words will be really useful when trying to figure out how to build your UIs. So with that, I want to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode. And I was planning on continuing on to the next one after this, but let's see, should I do it now? Maybe, but I will need a break anyway. I guess this is not very guess this is not very popular time slot anyway. That was really difficult episode to do. The whole UI system is really difficult to explain, I guess. Honestly, I think I might. I mean, whatever. Let's just record the next one, I guess. But I need a break. So. Doo-doo-doo. How do you change color? I don't get how you change the color. Okay, let's try to load UI sprites then. Mm, Let's see. Want to find the documentation. No, this one, no. Don't they have link to the official documentation? So, oh, documentation. This one, docsmodding.bannerlord.com. So, so hello everyone, and welcome to the episode 11 of the Artisan Workshop modding series. And in this episode, we will try to load a UI sprite next to the we will try to load UI sprite into the UI we created for the combat in the previous episode. And to do that, we will start by looking at the official documentation. So this is the official modding documentation for Bannerlord. And creating UI sprites is actually one of the very few things they have documented here. So we will try to follow this guide they have made for creating UI sprites. But the first thing we need is actually the actual file for our sprite. And to do that, I want to get an image of the item that we created. And to get a nice image for the item, I think it makes sense to go into the editor, and I will show you why. So in the editor, we get a better view of the item with nice background that we can use to create our UI sprite. So let's go into resource browser. And look at the Artisan beer mesh. And here we can use this atmosphere to change the background. And if we look for something that looks relatively neutral like this one, COD9 semi-cloudy, this way we can get a nice clean sprite of our image with a background that will be easy to remove. So let's just copy this and open. You can take a screenshot, and then let's go into GIMP. And GIMP will be our image manipulation software. So let's paste this in and use the magic wand. I need to increase the threshold a bit. So let's use the magic wand to just delete the background. You see there is very small, amount of background left. So let me increase the selection radius a bit and then get rid of it for the most part. Maybe it's not perfect, but I don't care too much at the moment. And this will be our sprite. So we need to export this. Now I will go ahead and export this into mods, Artisan beer asset originals, and this will be Artisan beer sprite. And then now we have our image, so we are ready to actually follow this guide. So let's go into Asset Originals and copy our PNG file. So let's see what this says. It says to create under GUI folder named Sprite parts. So let's go into our module inside the Bannerlord directory, and inside GUI, let's create folder named Sprite parts. And let's copy our PNG here. Well, no. Okay, so inside, so let's go into GUI, and so now we have folder named Sprite parts, and now we need another folder called UI underscore your category name. So let's call my category Artisan beer, and inside this folder, you can put your sprites. Okay. So we copy Artisan beer sprite here in GUI sprite parts UI Artisan beer. Okay, and then the next step is to actually the next we want to create this so the next step we need to figure out is how the UI sprites are actually loaded. So there are two options here for loading UI sprites. So either loading manually from the code or always loading your UI sprites. And let's say that right now I'm really lazy and I just want to always load my UI sprites. So to do that, I can create config like this. So it says to create new XML file, config.xml under your module name, GUI sprite parts, if you want to always load your UI sprites. So let's go here and create new XML called config.xml. And this will make it so that my UI sprites are always loaded and I don't need to worry about loading and unloading them manually. Now that we have the config, we can actually create the sprite sheets. Oh, my browser is. So now we can actually create the sprite sheets. And to do that, we need to go into this directory and find sprite sheet generator.x and run that program. So let's go into bin win64 shipping with editor, and let's find spreadsheet generator. So tailworlds.2dimension.spritesheet generator.x, and let's just run this. Let's see what it says. It says it found UI category UI Artisan beer, and it generated spreadsheets for this UI category and completed. So now we should have our generated spreadsheets, and we can go into the resource browser. Let's see if this refreshes. No, it does not. So now we can go into the resource browser and scan for new assets. And let's import this one. Oh. And why did it crash? Try to rerun this, I guess. Okay, so the editor crashed. So let's try again. Let's go into the editor and try to see if our sprites, if we can load our sprites here. So now in the editor, we can again go into the resource browser. Okay. And now in the resource browser, you can see that we have new assets in Gauntlet UI with this new sprite asset. And we don't actually need to do anything more in the resource browser. But one more thing we can go check to see what the sprite sheet generator actually did is that we can go into GUI and look at this file that was generated called Artisan beer sprite data. And here you can see the names for our sprites. And this might be useful if you have more sprites and you're kind of confused what sprites were generated. And then actually everything is ready and we can just use our sprite. And here is one example. Here is one example prefab where they use image widget to draw a sprite. So we can just copy this for our own code. And we can actually let's even copy this widget here. The widget is just a wrapper. So let's go into our HUD definition, which is here inside GUI prefabs and Artisan beer HUD. And let's put this widget here with the image widget, and let's put our text widget, which has text for the beer amount, also inside the widget children. The widget is the most basic container that can just have multiple children without any layouting. And you will soon see why this is slightly problematic, that we don't have any layouting. But this will draw an image with size 128, 128. We can let's put also horizontal alignment left and vertical alignment top. And we need to update the sprite name. And the sprite name will be Artisan beer sprite. Okay, and now we can go into game and just see if this is actually working at all. So let's try to find a battle and see what do we do here. So you see that we actually managed to draw the sprite. So the sprite is loaded and renders just fine. but you now see what it means that we have no layouting at all. So the both of these items, both of these UI widgets are just drawn as is to the top left corner. So we need to have some sort of layouting that will. So let's draw first the mug here, the mug sprite here, and then let's try to do some sort of layouting thing. We'll put the text next to this. So to do that, we will need to change the UI definition and replace this widget with something a bit smarter. And also, I think this is a bit too large. So the image is a bit too large, I think. So let's make it 80 by 80. That might be more appropriate size. And we don't actually need this horizontal alignment stuff, I don't think. Because we can actually put this to the container here. But we need some sort of more intelligent layouting. So let's go into reprep and try to search for layout. And we get a bunch of results with list panel. And list panel is like the workhorse of layouting, which just lays UI elements in order. So for example, here you have layout method horizontal left to right, which sounds pretty good, right? So let's just try to copy this, I think. So let's try to replace our widget with a list panel with layouting horizontal left to right. And let me keep the horizontal alignment stuff. Let me keep the alignment stuff. I still want it to be in the top left corner. Let's do width size policy, cover children, height size policy, cover children. We need to, because we changed this widget, we need to also change this to match. And now, if we look at a bit more context for this, so let's go context 3. You can see that list panels also have children, and they can have multiple children, and they will be laid out. So in this case, you have layout method vertical bottom to top, and then you have a couple text widgets which will be laid on top of each other. We want horizontal, so that should be fine for us. And actually we want vertical alignment center, I think, because I would like to have the text in the middle. I would like to have the text in the middle of the sprite vertically. So let's just try what this will look like. So should I try to see? Well, I think this should be reloaded. So if I just exit and go back in, let's do. If I just exit and go back in, I think it will reload it without me restarting the game. And you see it actually did reload it without me restarting the game. So the XMLs are loaded again if you exit and come back into the battle. Oh, actually, even if we set debug mode, there might even be hot reloading. I'm not exactly sure. Let me try this out. Maybe there's no hot reloading for this. I don't think it works. Okay, so but if you exit, so if you just exit the battle, so if I just make some change and then exit the battle and come back, so I remove the text widget. So now you see that the text is now gone, and I can bring it back, and again exit the battle and come back in, and now the text should reappear. And you see that we managed to do the layouting correctly. And we now have our UI sprite, we have the UI sprite sheet, and everything seems to be working just fine. And we got our first taste of actually doing layouting in the content UI. So in our movie definition, we now have very basic layout, list panel, horizontal left to right. But that is all for this episode. And let's see what is next. Oh, have I closed it? No, it's here. Oh, right, sound effects. So in the next episode, I will try to complete this mission view that we have going, the healing effect thing, by doing one last quality of life improvement, which is adding sound effects. And then the healing part of the project is done. But for now, I want to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode. And I think I'm done streaming for now. I think I might have to, I will have to, of course, edit this stuff into videos that hopefully make sense for the tutorial series, but these were really difficult episodes to record. Not super happy with it, but it is the best I was able to do so. Any questions? I guess there isn't too much viewership for this today anyway, so probably not. Anyway, I'm done for today, guys. So, or I don't know if I will continue later, but we'll see. So bye for now.